All right, so good afternoon. It is our pleasure, the Hudson County Bar Association, the Bar Foundation, and our Oral History Subcommittee to welcome our guest today. Today, of course, is July 26, 2017. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Robert Feeder, a Dean of the North Hudson Bar, who graciously accepted our invitation to come and speak to us today. Welcome, Mr. Feeder.
Thank you. Of course, Dean is now the new definition of old, but that's okay. I'll live with that.
Well, let's be factual on that, shall we? Based on my knowing you many years, going back to the days when I practiced law in North Hudson, and that was approximately 11 years ago. Actually, I have to be more particular. Actually, I was in Hoboken for a number of years, but I started in 1973 in North Hudson in West New York on top of Albee's Toy Store. But again, it's not about me. But you started a bit before that. When did you start your practice in North Hudson?
Well,
right?
I actually was admitted in 1955, and I was clerking in the Newark office of Millman and Rosen, but I went into the Army. Most of us did at that time. I was in the Army for 2 years. I came out of the Army in January of '58, and Millman and Rosen ran two offices, one in North Hudson, one in Newark, and they gave me a choice. And the North Hudson office would do maybe 50 cases a year, where Newark would do 7 very large cases. I was a young lawyer. 50 sounded a lot more inviting, and I elected to come to North Hudson and practice with Jim Rosen in Union City.
Jim Rosen, of course, and before I forget, just for posterity, we know you are, I'm, as you know, Barry Sarkissian. I'm now a judge of the Chancery Division, and those histories, those names come back to me. They may have been even before my time, but Jim Rosen ultimately became a Superior Court judge and then a federal judge, I recall.
Yes, he was a Superior Court judge in 1959. I think at that time he first was a county judge. They had county judges at that time too. And then they merged the county judges into the Superior Court, and he served here until he went to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals in Philadelphia. And that, I don't remember what year that was, but he served there for a year until he died. Well,
based on your admission in 1955, so you've been practicing law for 62 years, primarily in North Hudson. Fair statement?
Entirely.
Entirely in North Hudson. Mm-hmm. And when we talked about being a dean, let's put it out there. You know, you're 86 years of age. You look great.
I feel
how do you accomplish that?
Really, primarily through good genes. My father's mother lived till 107, and his father lived till 99. That's a lot of it, and also I stay active. I mean, not just in the law. I do outside things. I have a lot of interests. I'm a big Syracuse fan, and go to their basketball and football games. And
in Syracuse?
You know, I'm going up to Syracuse in November to hopefully see them beat Wake Forest. So we'll find out. And I get up there once a year. Sometimes I skip a year. And if there's a game within 150 miles of where I live, I will go to that game.
Are you still active physically with activities in your 80s?
The activity is essentially canoeing and walking. It used to be called hiking, but it's gotten shorter and flatter, so it's walking. But I do love canoeing, and we do that whenever we can in South Jersey. I have a house down there, and I'm there every weekend, all year round. I'm in this 4 weekends in a year.
Quiet water or a little ripple in the water when you're canoeing?
In New Jersey, it's quiet water, but I have done some whitewater canoeing in Vermont and in other places. And the Delaware River actually has a few lovely rapids, one called Foul Rift, which I've been through many times, and it's fun.
Mm. So, again, just to go back in history a little bit and going to the commencement of your practice, and again, you're still practicing actively in Guttenberg, New Jersey, I believe, mm-hmm. Correct?
Correct.
You went to your alma mater, Syracuse University, went to Harvard Law School, mm-hmm. and found your way from Harvard Law School, and you know, you know the deans, the other deans of North Hudson, as I do. There weren't too many graduates of Harvard Law that were practicing in North Hudson during the course of your career. Fair statement?
That's a fair statement. I don't know any, really, so that's a very fair statement, yes. I don't know any other Harvard Law School graduates in North Hudson ever in my entire time practicing here.
Where did you grow up?
Newark.
Oh, you did grow up in Newark. Okay, from there you might have found your way to Syracuse, from there to Harvard Law, and then coming back to New Jersey.
Came back, did my 2 years in the Army, most of that. Well, that's not true that it was all in New Jersey. I was stationed in Philadelphia, came back from the Army to Union City.
So your Army service was a break in you in your practicing law?
Yes, although for 20 of my 24 months in the Army, I was reviewing government contracts, so there was some law in there also.
They found a niche for you with your
They
talents.
found 80 of us who were in what was called pipeline. You weren't assigned to anything else yet, so they took 80 lawyers from all 6 Army areas around the country, told us what they wanted us to do, sent us to Philadelphia. Not bad duty.
So as you today arrived earlier today and came to my chambers on the 2nd floor, again right on the floor where the Chancery courtroom is, do you have remember during your active litigation days appearing before Chancery Division judges here in Hudson County?
I do. 90% of my litigation work was in Chancery. I loved that work. It was a great practice, and we had excellent judges. You really could know the judges better because it was one judge in Chancery, and if you were in Chancery a lot, you knew that judge, and he knew you.
Who do you remember appearing before in Chancery?
I remember Judge Pashman, who went to the Supreme Court, learned a lot from him, and Judge Matthews, who really had, by one appointment that he made of me as a receiver, had a dramatic effect on the rest of my career. The biggest client I ever had was a client I met during that receivership. And
this was an appointment by Judge Matthews?
I was appointed
Tell
by
us
Judge
about that.
Matthews.
What did that involve?
There was something called the Great Salad Oil Swindle back in the 1960s. It had worldwide repercussions. It almost brought down American Express because they were issuing warehouse receipts on alleged salad oil in Bayonne, which turned out much of it to be salt water. And he needed a receiver to physically take the premises. There was a similar bankruptcy called Allied Crude Oil going on in the federal courts. But someone to be receiver of the actual tanks and their content and sell them and pay that money over to wherever it should go. And he picked me as receiver.
How old were you at the time?
33.
So there you was, and I imagine there were powerhouse lawyers on all sides of that litigation.
New York law firms representing American Express, representing Bungie Corporation. Every major corporation had their own law firms, and there were several, Stryker, Tamsin, Dill in Newark, and I met some great lawyers, really great. Shanley and Fisher, Harold Fisher, one of the nicest guys I ever met.
Okay.
And Shanley was Eisenhower's press secretary, I believe. I never met him. But these were great guys, and they were a pleasure to work with.
So going from the time at that point when you're 33 years of age now, and again, you know, your younger years, for you, that could be, you know, a span of 40 or 50 years as opposed to the 62 years you've been practicing. But when you were appearing before those Chancery judges, I assume the Chancery Court was still in the administration building. Or was it? Or was
No,
this
it
at
was
the
here.
time? It was here.
It was a very small corner, a very small courtroom which had maybe 2 or 3 benches in it.
Now that was before they closed it.
Before they closed it, yes.
Okay, this is the Brennan Courthouse.
But Justice Pashman and Judge Matthews were in that small courtroom here in this building. Then it moved over to the larger building, and it was Judge Schneider and the one whose name I can't remember, but Judge Taunton and Vic Kilkenny, and these were great judges and just a pleasure to work before.
And then did you have, you run the, since you were primarily, when you were doing litigation, it was primarily in the Chancery Court, so you had the entire geographical location of that court from here originally to the administration building, 595 Newark Avenue, and then back here again
Back to here, sure.
several years ago when they reopened it, and you were still, and you had the opportunity to come back to the Chancery Court back in Brennan.
Yes, in that very beautiful courtroom with the murals all around it. I remember Judge Kimmelman was assigned to Hudson for a while, and Judge Kimmelman and I went to high school and law school together, so we knew each other, and it was sort of fun appearing before him. And Chancery practice was just great. It suited me because I knew right from wrong, and my view is right. If you know right from wrong, you're going to do okay in Chancery.
The practice now that you have, again, you're primarily doing transactional work.
Yes, it's primarily transactional work. A lot of closings. For me, it's a lot of closings. And I represent a school for special needs kids, which takes a certain amount of time, and a little work for the bank where my office is, and estate work. As you get older, your clients get older too, and some of them die, and you end up representing the estates. That is probably now 100% of my practice, those 3 or 4 areas.
So tell me, at 86 years young, what keeps you motivated to continue the practice and to show up and do what you do and do so well over the many years?
Well, I guess it starts with the fact that I have really loved being a lawyer. What a pleasure. And a surprise too, because law school was difficult. Harvard is not an easy law school in that you're competing with a lot of people who are really very, very smart. And I love what I'm doing. I'm a people person. I love having people around. Real estate closings are a social event, so to speak. You get an occasional jerk on the other side, but that's very seldom. It's a nice experience, and I like representing the school for special needs kids because I feel useful, and that's probably the right word. One of the reasons I practice is I feel useful, and that's important to me. And I have all the time off I want. I have 3 days off a week. How much time off do I need? So it works out great.
You still work in beyond the 3 days a week you do not work. Does that include the weekend, by the way?
So, yeah, I'm off from Thursday afternoon around 3 until Sunday. And you work down there now. My cell phone, I have some Fridays where I'm busier sitting on my cell phone at the shore than I am in the office. That's not often, but it does happen. And in today's world, you can be reached 7 days a week. And sometimes I am.
How do you like that?
I would rather not have it that way. I kid when I get all mixed up on something on the computer, that I kid that I wish we were still back to carrier pigeons, but it is what it is, and technology has changed the practice certainly. I used to have 3 secretaries when I was practicing. Today, and for several years for a lot of years the last 20 years with technology, 1 can accomplish what was being done by 3 in days of old.
Let's look at this breadth of experience you do have, the 62 years practicing law, and is there any way you could synopsize or not point to stories which show a change in the practice over the last 62 years? Well,
one change that I believe exists, but I'm not positive of it, is in the early years of practice, there were a lot less lawyers. We have 85,000 registered lawyers in New Jersey today, about half of whom practice here. I know that from my Client Protection Fund experience. We keep the records, and I go to the December meeting every year still. The camaraderie in the early years of my practice, in those early years, I'll say for 20 or 25 years, maybe even more than that, was terrific. We all knew each other. We all enjoyed each other's company. We liked practicing together. Whether that has really changed, I'm not sure. It may be that I have moved into a different age group, which I certainly have. So it may still exist, but I think that is a large change. But I see where the lawyers don't have that camaraderie. I can see it on the closings. They don't know each other. There's so many of them now. And they are more just doing the job without the social part of the thing. And social even while practicing law. I see much less of that.
Is there any stories that you remember from those better camaraderie days, mentioning some of your colleagues or clients that stick out in your mind?
Well, when it comes to colleagues, yes. The North Hudson Lawyers Club shows used to be terrific. We had some people who were great actors, great comedians, Joe Falbo, Louis Church, Chuck Krause, who's still around. They were good friends, not just of mine, but of everybody. And they were funny, and people used to come from other places to come to the North Hudson Lawyers shows because they were a little raunchy, as North Hudson can be. There were representing the local people was always an important part of my practice. I previously told you a story about a lady who called me to tell me her husband died, an elderly lady. Most of the people were immigrants here. And I told her she's got to get her husband's assets together and let me know, and we'll go from there. She shows up at my office the next day with a brown paper bag, puts it on my desk and says, and I asked her, what's this? This is my husband's assets. They were in the brown paper bag, $12,000 in cash. Those things are priceless. It was financially a small part of my practice, but in reality, half of it. And it was an important half because he felt useful, he felt needed. That was important. It's probably why I still practice.
Well, I suspect, in closing, again, thank you for taking your time. Since it's a Wednesday and not a Thursday where you might be leaving to go off to the to your canoe and to paddle down a nice creek somewhere in South Jersey, but thanks for sharing your experience with us, and I'm sure, I suspect, you're going to be useful in your profession for many more years to come. Thank you, Robert Feeder.
You're welcome, and I hope you're correct.